It's hard to put into words just how hyped Series 4 was way back in 2008. Over 13 million viewers tuned in for Voyage of the Damned, so you bet that the majority of the audience was going to watch the series when that coming soon trailer aired with the episode. I think I lost count how many times I watched that trailer back when I was 10. But regardless, we now have a returning companion in the style of Donna Noble. After love not working out for the Doctor, he just wants a mate, and these two will be utterly magical together. From walking fat, volcanic monsters, commentary on slavery, Sontarans and returning companions from the past 4 years, Series 4 is holding back no punches and is on course to deliver blockbuster entertainment for the next 13 weeks. Without further ado, let's wave hello to Series 4. At number 10, we have The Doctor's Daughter. Okay, so it may be a bit of a whiplash to go from me hyping up Series 4 to then discussing its worst episode, but regardless, the best choices are coming. The Doctor, Donna and Martha are taken to the planet Messaline where the Doctor's DNA is used to create a soldier clone, which turns out to be his daughter Jenny. With a title like that, you'd think there'd be time to explore this plot point thoroughly, but there really isn't. That was pretty much the entire pre-title sequence. Furthermore, in a series that gives us some of the most expensive looking stories of the new series, this story unfortunately feels like it got the short straw and just looks really cheap in comparison. The war between the Hath and the humans isn't interesting and isn't well developed enough for 45 minutes and just feels inconsequential. Furthermore, whilst Georgia Moffat is giving a great performance, if you hadn't told me that she was the Doctor's daughter, I wouldn't have guessed at all. The character just feels so ordinary and bland, and despite being his daughter, she doesn't have any of the Doctor's quirks at all. I'm even surprised she came back to life at the end, considering she's never been used again in the TV series, and it just seemed a bit pointless. The twist of war of only occurring across 7 days doesn't add anything to the story as well. It's brought up once and that's really it. The twist feels superfluous to the story that if you cut it out you wouldn't really miss anything. The Doctor's Daughter is just a dud in my opinion, a jumbled narrative, cheap production values, and it just feels so middling and stiff for 45 minutes. Whilst I'm not against doing out there concepts like the title suggests, there are better alternatives to check out in the series. At number 9 we have Partners in Crime. Whilst I think episodes like Rose and Smith & Jones are better season openers in the Russell T Davies era, Partners in Crime is still a very solid opening. The Doctor and Donna are both investigating adipose industries, though unknowingly together, who are giving out weight loss pills where the fat just seems to walk away. This episode is remarkably relevant about weight loss and pills that the adipose take full advantage of, as we are also a consumer society. I don't even mind the adipose looking babyish and cute, as they are innocent in all this. But Mrs. Foster feels the end completely justifies the means. This is also a great reintroduction for Donna Noble, as just from the visuals alone, we know what she's been up to since The Runaway Bride and that she still feels like the most useless person in the universe, but we all know great things are to come for her. Sarah Lancashire as Mrs. Foster is also a great villain. Her calm confidence gives her a lot of charisma, though I'm not a big fan of her downfall. It does feel a bit rushed. However, some of the comedy is a bit hit and miss as well, particularly the mime conversation between the Doctor and Donna. It just feels a bit too much for me, and the score doesn't do it any favours either. It just feels a bit out of place. Regardless, Partners in Crime is an enjoyable, solid opener that may not be the best, but it certainly delivers on an entertainment factor, and that's enough to recommend. At number 8 we have the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. Sontarans, unit, boy geniuses, and turning an everyday object into something scary. Combining those and you have the foundation for a great two-parter. Martha Jones calls the Doctor back to Earth to investigate a new system called Atmos that is an exclusive in cars created by boy genius Luke Rattigan, who is working with the Sontarans that use the cars as gas to convert the atmosphere into a new clone planet. This story might not be the most emotional or gut-punching as other stories in the season, but it is still a very entertaining action-packed adventure. The Sontarans are given a great update for the 21st century, their armour looks solid and their makeup looks fantastic, and their build-up is really well handled. First we hear their voices, see them in full armour, a bit of their face, and then the unmasking. It's great stuff. Christopher Ryan is brilliant as General Stahl, and is perfectly cast as an aged Sontaran general, and it's great to see a fully fledged army after only meeting single Sontarans for the most part in the classic series. We're also treated to a full proper unit story as we see them as investigators, the awesome army that we all know and love from the Pertwee era. Ryan Sampson as Luke Rattigan is brilliant as the genius who is constantly shouting but never being heard. He's completely pathetic, but his sacrifice at the end feels earned as he finally does something clever with his life. Whilst the story is not perfect, it is still brilliant family entertainment that Doctor Who promised to be when it came back to our screens again. At number 7 we have The Unicorn and the Wasp. There's a murder, a mystery, Agatha Christie, a giant wasp, and all set in the 1920s. Yep, that sounds about right to me. In an English country house during the 1920s, a murderer and a thief known as the Unicorn is about, but what connects this mystery with a giant wasp and Agatha Christie's mysterious disappearance? This episode is easily the funniest of the series, and completely bonkers, but there is still a fascinating insight into Agatha Christie's life. She never thought that her books and mysteries were any good, but it's her own intellect that manages to solve this mystery. It is a very well constructed whodunit, as you do think that any of the guests could be the suspects. Catherine Tate also stretches her comedic muscles and is completely hilarious as Donna, but doesn't feel out of place at all. The revelations make sense, and it has such a bright and summery feel to it that really makes me want to go to a garden party. If I had criticism, it would be that the titular unicorn feels pointless in its own story. It doesn't connect to the mystery regarding the wasp, and I feel you could have cut it and not miss much. It honestly sounds like it was added just to make a cool title. Regardless, The Unicorn and the Wasp is a witty, funny and entertaining summer adventure that is best enjoyed with lemonade on a hot summer's day. At number 6 we have Planet of the Ood. Hey, do you remember the Ood from Series 2, a race we didn't ask much questions about? Well, now they're back with some delicious social commentary on the foundations of slavery. The Doctor and Donna journey to the Ood sphere, where several of them are becoming rabid and beginning a slavers' revolution. But what is the circle that must be broken? Planet of the Ood is a unique story, as the Doctor and Donna really didn't have to do anything, and the episode's resolution would have remained the same. However, it's not a disadvantage, as through them we see the true horror behind Ood operations, and it is interesting to have humans be the villains rather than a generic monster. The snowy landscapes looks beautiful for the Ood sphere against the industrial look of Ood operations. It's a great combination. There are brutal scenes of slavery and cruelty that is surprisingly adult for the series, but doesn't feel out of place, and I have to praise them for tackling serious issues. Tim McInnery as Mr. Halpin is a great villain, and turning him into an Ood has such a disgusting irony that I can't help applaud the episode for. If I have criticism, it's that the giant brain feels too much of an out there concept that doesn't fit well with the serious themes of slavery in this episode. Plus, the twist of Dr. Ryder helping the Ood this whole time is so tacked on that it's forgotten about as soon as it's revealed. Still, Planet of the Ood is a gritty, dark, action-packed tale with great production values that shows the horror of slavery and the wonders of revolution. At number 5 we have The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. This story will definitely hold a special place in my heart, as 10-year-old me watched this with great anticipation. Davros and the Daleks are planning to destroy the whole of reality using the Earth and 26 other planets to power the reality bomb. It's up to Earth's mightiest heroes that aren't the Avengers to stop the new Dalek Empire. This is the closest Doctor Who has ever come to being a movie, with the Daleks being on top form throughout as they conquer the Earth with such ease and kill anyone who disobeys. They are a force to be reckoned with. The Stolen Earth is a great story for the Daleks, though with Journey's End it does get rather overcrowded and buckles under its own weight, and the Daleks and the companions do suffer a bit. Luckily, the limelight switches to Davros, and this isn't a bad thing, as Julian Bleach is fantastic. The Stolen Earth is a terrific opener. There are incredible scenes of the Daleks conquering the Earth, and the situation becomes increasingly helpless as our companions are left powerless. Not to mention one of the series' most amazing cliffhangers, with the surprise regeneration, where the entire country had its buttocks clenched for a whole week as we waited for that resolution. However, when we get to Journey's End, the story does buckle under its own weight, and the companions' appearance feel a little redundant, or in some cases they're put in the corner until the plot needs them again. Regardless, I have to give such amazing credit to Donna Noble's departure. It is so heartbreaking, as Donna never saw herself as important, but she saved the whole of reality and now she forgets all that. It brings a tear to my eye every time I watch it. While this two-parter is jumbled and overcrowded, I can't deny how amazing the spectacle is, and the Daleks certainly help bring this to life, and from an entertainment and fan service, this finale certainly delivers. At number 4 we have The Fires of Pompeii. If I had to pick the most overlooked story of Series 4, it would definitely be The Fires of Pompeii. Seriously, why doesn't anyone talk about this episode? The Doctor and Donna arrive in Pompeii before the volcano Vesuvius erupts and consumes the city in lava, but what is the connection between the volcano, a psychic sisterhood, and volcanic monsters? This story reintroduces the idea that was brought up in Classic Who that you cannot change established history, as Pompeii's destruction is a fixed point in time. This premise leads to a superb moral dilemma whether the Doctor and Donna have the right to interfere. It was a great idea to give the Doctor the choice of either let Pompeii be destroyed or let the Pyroviles conquer the world. We get to see how scarred the Doctor was due to the Time War, because he's too scared to look back at a city he let burn, just like he did with Gallifrey. If you had any doubt about Catherine Tate's abilities as an actress, this episode put those doubts to complete rest, as she is wonderful in this story. Refusing to accept the Doctor is in charge, and is even with him when he presses the button so he's not alone, and when she screams at him to take the TARDIS back, it gives me goosebumps every time. No wonder the Doctor just needs a mate for this series. This episode looks utterly gorgeous as well, with great production values, sets, costumes, and the Pyroviles are a very inventive creation. And you know what, it's great to see actors like Karen Gillan and Peter Capaldi. I really hope they went on to great things in their acting careers. The Fires of Pompeii is firing on all cylinders with fantastic effects, a well-crafted script, and a complex morality that makes this a memorable historical. If you haven't watched this story in a while, definitely give it a rewatch. It is modern art. At number 3 we have Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. Yeah, you may be surprised that Stephen Moffat's output for this series didn't make the top spot, but regardless, this is still a fantastic two-parter. The Doctor and Donna land in the biggest library in the universe to discover it empty. An archaeological team arrives to find out the mystery behind the missing population, but who is River Song and what is really lurking in the shadows? Moffat is great at taking everyday objects and making them scary, and this story makes shadows scary, and the Vashta Nerada are a terrific creation that I'm surprised were never brought back. The shadow that can strip your flesh like a piranha still gives me chills to this day. The Doctor is out of his depth, as even he doesn't understand the brilliant River Song, and his confrontation with the Vashta Nerada is great. He simply tells it to look him up, and the swarm backs off. That visually represents how powerful the Doctor is. It is amazing. Donna is given a lot to do as well, as she's separated from the Doctor in part 2 and lives in her own cyber reality that feels so real to her but isn't, and she's desperate to cling on to it no matter what. When her children are snatched away from her, it genuinely gives me chills, all down to Tate's amazing performance. Alex Kingston as River Song walks into the room with terrific screen presence and plays the mystery so well that wouldn't be resolved until a whopping 3 years later. Her sacrifice is really appropriate for this story, as because of the wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey, this won't be the last we see of her. Despite the horror, it's also a terrific technology gone wrong story, as the mystery behind the young girl watching the action is a great way for the two stories to interconnect, and feels so magical of Charlotte Abigail Lux being plugged into a system where she can wander through every story ever written. Despite having a high body count, the episode still ends on a hopeful note, with River and her friends wandering in their own idea of heaven. Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead is a prime example of the excellent standard that Stephen Moffat can simply revel in being creative, and stands a terrific mixture of horror and whimsy that I can't recommend enough. At number 2 we have Turn Left. This is a perfect what-if type story, as Donna Noble is shown by the Tricksters Brigade an alternate reality in which she never met the Doctor in The Runaway Bride. Donna is tricked into turning right at a junction, meaning she never had a job as a temp, where she never met her fiancé Lance and ended up in the TARDIS on her wedding day, which meant the Doctor died trying to defeat the Rachnos. Because of the Doctor's death, the whole world turns to chaos, with the events of Series 3 and 4 going undefeated, and it's done incredibly effectively. Martha Jones dies at the hospital from Smith & Jones along with Sarah Jane, the space Titanic floods southern England with radiation, the Adipose kill millions of obese USA citizens, and the Sontarans begin to choke the Earth with gas, and worst of all, the stars begin to fade. This is a Dr. Light episode, meaning he plays a small part, and your enjoyment of this episode will depend on how much you like Donna Noble, and personally I love her, so this episode is a win for me. When watching this as a 10-year-old, I know what would come after each event, hoping it would get better, but it just gets worse, and Donna thinking she's nothing, and has to build her confidence and set time right. It's so brilliant to watch, with Catherine Tate giving an amazing performance, as well as Bernard Cribbins as Wilfred Mott. If I do have nitpicks, it's the inclusion of Rose. Personally, I felt you didn't need her in this story, but you can't win them all. Also, that time Beetle looks pretty plastic. However, with a great premise, a grim atmosphere, and an excellent take on an alternative timeline, Turn Left is an episode that will have you gripped from start to finish. And at number 1 we have Midnight. Not only is this the best 10th Doctor story, but this is easily Russell T Davies' best script, as it's filled with psychological horror, claustrophobia, and the morality of humans. The Doctor takes a trip on the diamond planet of Midnight that unfortunately breaks down, and the knocking on the wall is heard, and one of the passengers begins repeating everyone on the vessel. The enemy in this is perfect, as we never see what it looks like and we never know what its true intentions are, but the effect it has on the Doctor and the other passengers is what makes it so memorable and terrifying. The passengers are perfectly introduced as everyday ordinary people at the start, but when thrown into a terrifying situation and facing an enemy that repeats, they even consider murdering the possessed Sky Silvestri, despite only repeating and not being able to move. As time goes on, when they start to turn on the Doctor, they suggest throwing him out too. The episode perfectly displays what fear does to people. It makes them dangerous and angry, and displays the Doctor at his most vulnerable, especially when he's possessed by the creature near the end. Leslie Sharp as Skye is phenomenal, while repeating what others say doesn't sound that terrifying on paper. Due to her performance, she makes it work, and it's scary to watch. And another fun bit of trivia, David Troughton appears in this story as Professor Hobbs, who is the son of the second Doctor himself, Patrick Troughton. Through average conversations the Doctor has with the passengers on the trip, it definitely makes them more relatable and believable, which makes their confrontation with the monster later on in the story great as well. They're normal people, but throw them into a terrifying situation, and they become something they never thought they were capable of being. With excellent performances, psychological horror, the morality of humanity being tested, and the Doctor at his most scared and vulnerable, Midnight is a truly magnificent piece of television. And that is all for Series 4. Overall, this is definitely one of my favourite series of the revived era. Every episode is aiming high, and whilst the landing may have misfired only once, that's still a testament to the terrific writing, acting and production values that Series 4 had to offer. It is easily my favourite 10th Doctor series. Next time, it is the beginning of the end, as the 10th Doctor will be hanging up his TARDIS keys and handing over to the 11th Doctor. See you all next time.